Today's serial topic is the cauldron, or at least part one of many. Today's focus is on what the cauldron is at a high level and how it has the power to make fae and the connections that are associated with that. I am saving its history and origins and other powers for another time because, quite frankly, this can't be an hour long. So, what is the cauldron? The cauldron is an extremely powerful and ancient magical artifact. It is the source of all life, and the world was born from the cauldron. The legend goes that the mother poured out the contents of the cauldron, and thus the world was created. The mother and the cauldron are considered the two deities in this world, and it is said that the cauldron holds everyone's fate, but it's the mother that decides their fate. There are, however, some very blurred lines between the cauldron and the mother and fate and life, but bottom line is that they are the two creators of the world, and the cauldron is the literal tether to keeping this world alive. Now, I should say that Cassian shares a different origin story in ACOWAR, where it was the High Fae who brought the mother and cauldron as deities into this world, and it was the old gods who ruled before. So I don't know how that would work with the cauldron essentially having to be here in existence for there to even be a world. With that said, there is the very real fact that all life will cease to exist if the cauldron was destroyed. It is said that all the magic in the world is contained inside the cauldron. The cauldron is ancient and cruel without allegiance to anyone but itself. While I am purposefully skimming past its history, it is important to note that the cauldron was corrupted after falling into the Daglin's hands. Instead of being a tool for creation, the cauldron became a tool of destruction. The cauldron was eventually stolen back from the Daglin at great cost, and because it couldn't be destroyed, the cauldron was hidden and over time forgotten. Keep in mind, this all occurred thousands and thousands of years ago. We learned from the bone carver that the cauldron was hidden at the bottom of a frozen lake in Lapland, but it vanished a long time ago. It had been considered myth for a long time, so much so that the Book of Breathings was thought to be symbolic in nature versus actually powerful and connected to a tangible cauldron. The cauldron was only legend until the king found it very recently after searching for it for centuries. The cauldron is at its full power when it has its 3 feet attached to it. There we are with our feet again. More than 1,500 years ago, the 3 feet were cleaved from the cauldron's base as a way to fracture some of its power. Yes, this removal of the feet did dull a little bit of the cauldron's power, but it still could be used. I'm honestly not sure how this incident fits in with the timeline of the cauldron being lost, so we're going to skip over that part. These 3 feet were hidden in 3 different priestess temples in Prythian: Césaire, Sangreva, and Ithaca, until the king of Hybern stole the feet from these temples to ensure the cauldron is at full power for all of his evil mission things. Now, if we're talking about the cauldron, we have to bring up the Book of Breathings, which I was saying to Nicole, I can't believe that didn't have its own serial segment. But anyway, the Book of Breathings was forged using the last of the molten ore used to forge the cauldron, and it contains spells to nullify the cauldron's power or to control it wholly. The book is written in the holy tongue, also known as Lashon HaKodesh. To prevent the book from falling into the wrong hands, it was divided into 2 halves, and after the war between Fae and mortals 500 years ago, one half was given to the summer court and the other half was given to the mortal queens. Again, this was symbolic and more so an enforcer of the peace between the 2 species, showcasing that the power and might of the book cannot be used unless the Fae and mortals agree to come together again. Let's talk about the cauldron's powers. The cauldron is pure energy, pure power, but like all other magic, after it exerts a lot of power, the cauldron needs to rest and regather its strength. The only way for the cauldron to be nullified is via the 2 halves of the Book of Breathings and touching the cauldron, speaking the spell from the book. And in order to wield the Book of Breathings, you must be made. Nullifying the cauldron is very dangerous though, and comes at a terrible cost. The cauldron drains you of your life in order to be successfully nullified. The cauldron is the size of a bathtub and forged of dark iron. Feyre describes it as both the most hideous and alluring thing she has ever seen. It exudes power and is the map for creation. Like I said earlier in this episode, it's it's like the power is everything that was and wasn't, opposites coexisting, light and dark, pain and ecstasy, fire and ice, etc. Inside the cauldron is inky swirling black, and it is like the cauldron has its own heartbeat. I just love that part so much. Among the many powers of the cauldron, it can resurrect dead people if their souls were preserved. The only example we have of a soul being preserved is Jurian, who Amarantha purposefully kept in limbo as its own way of torturing him. The cauldron can also break through ancient and powerful wards, as Valaris unfortunately found out. The cauldron can also destroy the magical wall, which we will explore much more in ACOWAR. The Daglin had also used the cauldron to produce many horrific creatures that they like to set free and hunt for sport. Some of these cauldron-made creatures are locked in the prison now. Renowned weapons and other magical artifacts have also been made from the cauldron, including the sword Gwydion and Azriel's Truth Teller. I can't wait to explore this more in the rest of our series deep dives. But for today's Surreal Tea Time, let's focus on the cauldron's power to turn mortals into fae and what being made means, or I'm gonna at least try here. Turning fae within the cauldron has some risks associated with it. The mortal individual must be strong-willed and basically have the willpower to survive it. As far as we know, there are two kinds of made individuals. Number one, how Thera is made. Even though she is not made by the cauldron itself, here's how I think of her link to the cauldron. She was made by magic, the High Lord's magic. And all magic is ultimately from the cauldron because all life and this world come from the cauldron. I believe that this is at least the case for Thera. Amaran is a different sort of maid because if you want to get technical, she is not of this world. So therefore her magic that she used to trap herself in this body isn't necessarily from the cauldron like Thera's High Lord magic is. I know, this is very confusing. So the reason Thera is drawn to the cauldron, the reason she can wield the Book of Breathings is because she was not born fae, but made fae by magic. Like calls to like. The cauldron recognizes she is created by its magic. I'm not sure how Miriam fits into this mix because she was half fae and was resurrected by a cauldron-made artifact. She didn't get a new body like Thera, but she did get immortality, so I don't know. Number two, then we have the other kind of maid, like Nesta and Elaine, who are literally turned fae by the cauldron itself. We will learn in ACOWAR that they have a direct connection to the cauldron and its magic, which Thera does not have. In simplest terms, they are directly made by the cauldron, and Thera is indirectly made by the cauldron. Being cauldron made makes you different because you are quite literally made differently than other fae. For instance, the healer looking at Elaine, she is not able to get into her mind the way she would be able to with other fae because Elaine is cauldron made. Made fae's powers are closely bound to the cauldron. Well, again, we'll explore that a lot more in ACOWAR. The cauldron has a mind of its own when it comes to who it makes and what it provides for them. For instance, the cauldron likes Elaine, so it gives her the gift of being a seer. But then Nesta, in all her hatred and rage and fight, took from the cauldron, forcing it to give more than it wanted, which upset the cauldron and essentially made it malfunction. So when the youngest mortal queen went in to be made after Nesta, the cauldron took what she valued most, her youth. So now the youngest queen is an immortal old crone. And now, without the power Nesta took, the cauldron isn't working properly. I'm going to end this cauldron discussion for now, but stay tuned for so much more as we head into ACOWAR.